Before World War I, the idea of governments borrowing money directly from ordinary citizens was almost unimaginable. For centuries, the world of finance was an exclusive club, reserved for the wealthy elite and powerful banking families. Governments in need of funds would quietly approach these private financiers, arranging loans behind closed doors, far from the public eye. Debt was a private affair among the wealthy, a discreet transaction that rarely touched the lives of everyday people. The average citizen had little reason to think about government borrowing, let alone participate in it. But the outbreak of the Great War changed everything. The scale of destruction and the need for resources were unlike anything the world had ever seen. Armies grew larger, weapons more advanced, and the costs soared beyond what traditional financiers could provide. Traditional funding methods failed to keep pace with the demands of total war. Governments found themselves facing empty treasuries and mounting expenses, forcing them to seek new solutions. In response, they introduced war bonds, an entirely new concept. These were not just financial instruments, but calls to action, inviting citizens to support the war effort not for profit, but out of loyalty and love for their country. For the first time, ordinary people were asked to become creditors to their own governments. This invitation transformed the relationship between state and citizen, making everyone a stakeholder in the nation's fate. Buying bonds was framed as a moral duty, a way for families on the home front to stand shoulder to shoulder with soldiers on the battlefield. Posters and pamphlets urged citizens to do their part, making sacrifice a shared value. This powerful narrative of shared sacrifice and collective responsibility reshaped national finance. Personal savings, once kept for rainy days, became vital tools for the survival of the state. The war bond emerged as a potent symbol of patriotism, forever changing how citizens engaged with their governments and how nations funded their ambitions. This was more than a financial innovation. It was a profound shift in national identity, making debt a shared endeavor and uniting people in a common cause. The financial demands of the First World War were staggering, reaching levels that no one could have predicted at the outset. As the conflict dragged on, the costs mounted relentlessly, funding millions of soldiers, endless supplies of ammunition, and the machinery of modern warfare. Governments quickly realized that the old ways of paying for war, through taxes and gold reserves, were simply not enough to cover the immense expenses. Britain and Germany, two of the main powers, soon found themselves in dire financial straits. Their treasuries were drained, and traditional sources of funding were drying up. The scale of the war was unlike anything the world had ever seen, and the financial systems of the time were not prepared for such a burden. Desperate for funds, both nations turned to their citizens for help. They launched massive campaigns to sell war loans and bonds, urging ordinary people to invest their savings in the war effort. Posters, rallies, and advertisements filled the streets, making the act of lending money to the government a patriotic duty. In Germany, these loans were promoted as investments in an inevitable victory. Citizens were told that their financial support would help secure a triumphant future for the nation, and many responded with enthusiasm, lining up to buy war bonds. When the United States entered the war in 1917, it too faced the daunting challenge of financing a massive military campaign. The government introduced Liberty bonds, calling on Americans from all walks of life to contribute to the cause. These campaigns became national mobilizations, uniting communities, and transforming millions of citizens into financial participants in the war. Buying a bond was seen as both a civic responsibility and a personal investment in victory. The results were astonishing. The United States raised over $20 billion through Liberty bonds, while Britain collected billions of pounds from its own citizens. This massive public borrowing was unprecedented, and it changed the way wars would be financed forever. For the first time, governments could tap into the collective savings of their people, using the power of public trust to fund the war effort. This new mechanism allowed nations to sustain conflicts on a scale never before possible. It was a revolutionary shift in national finance, moving away from reliance on a handful of wealthy lenders and instead depending on the contributions of millions. The war had created a new relationship between governments and their citizens. The financial legacy of the Great War was a new model of public debt, one that would reshape global finance for generations to come. The burden of war was now shared by entire nations, not just their leaders. In the end, governments learned to harness the power of public trust as a vital financial resource, forever changing the way nations would pay for war. Governments launched emotionally charged campaigns to sell war bonds. In the US, movie stars rallied support, equating bond buying with patriotism. Posters and slogans appealed to guilt and fear, making money a weapon. Social pressure was intense, with communities competing to raise funds. Propaganda wove bond buying into daily life, testing loyalty and love for country. The campaigns bypassed rational thought, selling debt as a noble cause. Governments learned to blend finance with emotion, making debt feel patriotic. This fusion became a permanent tool in modern statecraft. War bonds were once seen as a symbol of security and patriotism, a way for ordinary citizens to support their country and safeguard their future. People lined up at counters, investing their hard-earned money with the hope that these bonds would provide stability and a modest return. But as governments printed more money to finance war efforts and reconstruction, the value of currency began to erode. Prices in markets soared, and the cost of everyday goods spiraled out of reach for many families. The purchasing power of each dollar, pound, or mark shrank dramatically, leaving savers with less than they had started with. In the United States, for example, a $100 war bond that once promised a secure future lost half its value by the 1920s. What seemed like a safe investment quickly became a source of disappointment and frustration for countless Americans. Across the Atlantic, Britain faced a similar fate. Inflation swept through the economy, decimating the savings of bondholders and forcing families to rethink their financial plans. The sense of security that war bonds once offered was shattered. The real value of investments withered away, breaking the promise of safe returns. Many who had trusted in these bonds found themselves struggling to make ends meet, their savings diminished by forces beyond their control. Nowhere was this more dramatic than in Germany, where hyperinflation in the early 1920s was catastrophic. Middle-class families watched their life savings evaporate almost overnight, as banknotes became so worthless they were used as fuel for fires. The financial tragedy was profound. Patriotic citizens who had answered their nation's call bore the brunt of the economic fallout, their sacrifices met with hardship instead of reward. Inflation acted as a hidden tax, quietly eroding wealth and serving as a stealthy default on government promises. It was a silent force, often misunderstood, but devastating in its impact. The financial toll of war was far greater than anyone had anticipated. The scars of inflation lingered long after the fighting stopped, shaping economies and lives for generations. Citizens' trust in financial institutions and government promises was deeply shaken. The fragility of these assurances became painfully clear as people watched their savings dwindle. The lesson was unmistakable. No matter how safe an investment may seem, inflation can silently devastate even the most carefully built nest egg, leaving families vulnerable. The legacy of war bonds stands as a cautionary tale, reminding us of the hidden dangers that can threaten financial security and the importance of vigilance in protecting our savings. Post-war, governments faced insurmountable debt to their citizens. Repayment was impossible, so they rolled over the debt. Britain converted loans into perpetual bonds, never repaying the principal. The US absorbed Liberty bonds into its growing national debt. This marked a shift in government finance, normalizing large national debts. Public trust became a financial resource, enabling limitless borrowing. The war bond drives created a permanent market for government debt. The temporary loans became a fixture in national finance. The war's financial strategies laid the foundation for modern debt systems. The legacy was a world of perpetual borrowing, reshaping fiscal policy. The war bond model became a template for future crises. Devoured saw a reprise of patriotic debt campaigns, with similar success. The Cold War and post-9/11 periods used bonds to rally public support. Economic crises like 2008 and COVID-19 triggered massive government borrowing. New challenges see green and social bonds marketed as noble causes. The principle remains, framing debt as a virtuous act. The narrative of shared purpose continues to sell government agendas. The war's financial lessons endure, influencing modern fiscal strategies. Debt, wrapped in compelling stories, remains a powerful tool. The war bond experiment shifted the financial system's foundation. Gold-backed currency gave way to faith-based finance. Governments broke the gold link, relying on public trust instead. Propaganda campaigns manufactured belief, turning trust into an asset. The U.S. Treasury market became the global financial bedrock post-W2. The dollar, no longer gold-backed, rests on government credit. This psychological shift moved from metal to institutional trust. Today's finance is faith-based, with currency value, a social agreement. The war taught governments to replace tangible assets with public trust. It unlocked a world of limitless debt, reshaping global finance.